Welcome to our deep dive into the macroeconomic value of the FIFA World Cup. Every 4 years, billions tune in to witness the spectacle, but beneath the excitement lies a complex web of financial, social, and geopolitical forces. Host nations tout the event as a catalyst for urban renewal, infrastructure upgrades, and tourism booms, yet the reality is often far more nuanced. Today, we'll unravel the industrial power behind the World Cup, exploring its impact on global capital, social transformation, and the persistent mismatch between public investment and real economic returns. Let's begin by understanding why the World Cup is more than just a game. The World Cup stands at the apex of global sports entertainment, but its economic footprint has grown exponentially. Host nations often see it as a unique opportunity for modernization and nation branding. However, the mismatch between public capital inputs and macroeconomic outputs has become more pronounced. This report aims to dismantle traditional financial narratives, examining deep institutional mechanics, fiscal vulnerabilities, and marketplace distortions. By scrutinizing phenomena like the winner's curse, white elephant stadiums, and the crowding out effect, we map the systemic risks to public balance sheets. Ultimately, we propose a strategic framework for future sports economic policy, emphasizing fiscal sustainability and asset cross-utility. To understand the macroeconomic implications, we must first examine FIFA's institutional architecture. FIFA is registered as a nonprofit in Switzerland, but its business model operates as a global corporate monopoly. FIFA centralizes all commercial revenue streams, broadcasting, marketing, hospitality, licensing, and ticketing, while externalizing infrastructure and operational costs onto host nations. This asymmetry means FIFA retains billions in liquidity, while host taxpayers shoulder the financial burden. The structure is further intensified by mandatory government guarantees, requiring hosts to create tax-free bubbles for FIFA and its partners, blocking domestic tax collection during peak economic activity. FIFA's commercial exploitation is divided into several massive channels. Broadcasting rights are fully retained by FIFA, resulting in international capital flight and zero media asset returns for the host public. Global sponsorships benefit FIFA and multinational partners, suppressing local businesses. Ticketing and hospitality are dominated by FIFA, with only a small percentage allocated to local committees. Infrastructure capital expenditures are entirely taxpayer-funded, often for single-use stadiums. Fiscal obligations include tax-exempt status for FIFA and affiliates, eroding the domestic tax base during peak activity. This structure creates a major deficit. Hosts build the platform, but profits are protected from taxation and transferred out. FIFA mandates extensive government guarantees from bidding states. These legal prerequisites require the host country to establish tax-free bubbles covering FIFA, subsidiaries, broadcast partners, and sponsors. During the tournament, when economic transactions peak, the host government is blocked from collecting corporate income tax, VAT, or customs duties. This creates a structural deficit. Billions in public funds are used to build the commercial platform, while profits are legally protected from domestic taxation and immediately transferred out of the national economy. Securing World Cup hosting rights is shaped by geopolitical ambition and nation branding. Auction theory and game theory reveal the winner's curse. The winner overestimates the asset's value, resulting in overpayment and destroyed net economic value. Candidate governments escalate capital commitments to win FIFA's approval, relying on speculative and optimistic econometric models. Once selected, these commitments become legally binding, leading to rigid deadlines, destroyed cost controls, and systemic corruption. The public capital expenditure required ends up multiple times higher than initial projections, ensuring the host suffers from the winner's curse long before the tournament begins. The winner's curse operates on a massive state-backed scale. Bidding nations compete by expanding capital commitments, not optimizing costs. Econometric models commissioned by bidding committees inflate expected job creation, FDI, and tourism revenues. Once selected, speculative commitments become binding and construction begins under non-negotiable deadlines. Contractors and suppliers exploit the urgency, leading to collusive bidding and cost overruns. The final public capital expenditure is often several times higher than politically motivated projections, locking the host into fiscal vulnerability before the event even starts. The most enduring macroeconomic scar is the creation of white elephant infrastructure. These are massive assets whose maintenance costs far outweigh their long-term utility. FIFA mandates a minimum of 12 world-class stadiums, often built in peripheral markets lacking robust local demand. During the event, stadiums run at full capacity, but post-tournament, they become hyper-specialized structures with limited repurposing potential. The annual fixed costs for maintaining a modern stadium range from $5 million to $15 million, draining public finances and diverting funds from high multiplier social investments. After the World Cup, host nations face severe ongoing drains on public finances. Multiple stadiums built in regions with minimal attendance become permanent burdens on municipal and national budgets. Funds that could support healthcare, education, or industrial R&D are locked into subsidizing empty arenas. This depresses long-term productivity growth and highlights the opportunity cost of mega-event infrastructure. The mismatch between public spending and societal benefit becomes stark, fueling debates about the true value of hosting the World Cup. Host governments promise transformative booms in international tourism, projecting hundreds of thousands of affluent fans flooding the country. While gross tourism receipts spike during the tournament, net gains are often marginal or negative. The crowding out effect and displacement effect undermine these projections. High demand for hospitality triggers hyperinflation, causing traditional leisure tourists and business travelers to avoid the country. The host replaces stable, high-margin tourism with transient sports fans whose consumption is narrow and localized. The crowding out effect occurs when sports fans alter local marketplace dynamics. High demand for hotels, rentals, flights, and dining triggers extreme price inflation. Traditional tourists and business travelers cancel or redirect trips to avoid crowds and inflated prices. The host nation replaces its stable tourism base with transient sports fans, whose spending is concentrated in matchday corridors. This displacement results in marginal or negative net tourism gains, undermining the economic justification for hosting. Sports tourists display highly localized consumption profiles. They spend heavily on match tickets and budget accommodations, but contribute minimally to broader cultural or regional tourism. Their spending is concentrated in stadium vicinities and fan zones, leaving businesses outside these perimeters left out. Major urban centers may experience a net decline in retail and commercial revenue during mega events, as local residents alter their behavior to avoid congestion. This weakens the tournament's overall economic impact. The 2014 World Cup in Brazil is a significant case study in sports macroeconomics. Brazil projected the tournament as a showcase of economic rise, predicting $15 billion in capital investment would expand infrastructure across 12 cities. However, most promised transit improvements were abandoned due to delays and management issues. Public funds shifted to stadium construction, with costs skyrocketing due to corruption. The Estadio Nacional Mané Garrincha cost over $900 million, despite Brasilia lacking a top-tier team. Massive spending on luxury venues and underfunded public services sparked historic social unrest, with citizens demanding FIFA-standard schools and hospitals. From a macroeconomic standpoint, the 2014 World Cup did not lift Brazil's long-term growth. Instead, it increased public sector debt, accelerated inflation in urban centers, and contributed to a deep recession. The opportunity cost of the tournament was unsustainably high for an emerging economy. The mismatch between public spending and societal benefit became a rallying point for protests, highlighting the risks of mega-event hosting for countries with fragile fiscal structures. Qatar's 2022 World Cup broke all spending records, with capital expenditures exceeding $220 billion. Conventional ROI analysis shows a profound market failure, as the event brought in less than $6 billion in gross revenues. However, Qatar's strategy was rooted in geopolitical macroeconomics and long-term diversification. The World Cup accelerated the deployment of foundational infrastructure, including the Doha Metro, Hamad International Airport, Hamad Port, and the creation of Lusail Smart City. The primary objective was nation branding and the generation of geopolitical soft power, forming a critical component of national security and foreign defense. Qatar's World Cup spending was integrated into its National Vision 2030, aiming to transition from a hydrocarbon-dependent economy to a global hub for knowledge, logistics, tourism, and finance. The infrastructure built for the tournament is intended to attract foreign direct investment, international talent, and sustainable industries. While the immediate economic return was negative, the long-term value depends on Qatar's ability to leverage its new assets for future growth. The World Cup served as an accelerant, compressing decades of development into a single decade. The fiscal unsustainability of single-nation hosting models led to a structural shift. The 2026 World Cup, co-hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, marks the dawn of the consortium joint hosting model. This paradigm expands the tournament to 48 teams while minimizing capital expenditure shocks. The core strategy relies on asset optimization and eliminating new stadium construction. Matches are spread across 16 existing venues, reducing capex to near zero and restricting public spending to minor upgrades and operational security. By spreading matches across 3 nations and time zones, the consortium model dilutes fiscal burden and maximizes the multiplier effect. The expanded format allows for regional economic spikes without causing hyperinflation or overloading infrastructure. The collaborative approach lowers risk, turning the World Cup from a debt-driven gamble into an efficient exercise in maximizing operational and commercial capacity. This shift preserves public capital and sets a new standard for mega-event hosting. A comparative analysis of modern World Cup cycles reveals a widening gap between initial projections and actual macroeconomic realities. South Africa 2010 saw a 275% cost overrun, Brazil 2014 reached 200%, Russia 2018 hit 121%, and Qatar 2022 soared to 238%. The primary legacies include severe post-event maintenance burdens, public backlash, abandoned projects, and structural deficits. The North American 2026 model projects only a 25% overrun, thanks to zero stadium capex and risk mitigation via pre-existing assets. Cost overruns are not isolated exceptions, but systemic features of single-nation hosting models. As the tournament grows, the gap between short-term receipts and long-term debt widens. This reinforces the necessity of shifting toward multinational consortia to preserve public capital. The historical trajectory demonstrates that structural risk mitigation is essential for sustainable mega-event hosting. To build a sustainable sports economic model, future governments and policymakers must implement strategic transformations. First, mandate the pre-existing infrastructure paradigm. FIFA should abandon bespoke stadium construction, restricting bidding to nations with fully functional multi-use arenas. Second, abolish extraterritorial tax exemptions. FIFA and partners should be subject to local taxes, ensuring public treasuries recapture wealth. Third, prioritize adaptive cross-utility design. Temporary expansions must be modular and convertible for post-event use. Fourth, institutionalize multinational regional rotations. Joint hosting must become the default framework, distributing matches across economic zones to avoid debt vulnerability. FIFA must permanently abandon its policy of requiring new stadium construction. Bidding criteria should be legally restricted to nations or consortia capable of hosting the tournament using existing, commercially viable multi-use arenas. This shift will prevent the creation of white elephant assets and ensure that public capital is invested in infrastructure with long-term utility. By leveraging existing venues, host nations can minimize risk and maximize economic returns. Host governments must unite against demands for total tax-free corporate bubbles. FIFA and its global commercial partners should be subject to localized corporate income taxes and VAT on all transactions within the host nation's territory. This reform will ensure that the local public treasury recaptures a fair portion of the wealth generated during the tournament, correcting the current imbalance and supporting fiscal sustainability. Temporary structural expansions must be built using modular, deconstructible engineering. Stadiums should be designed to scale down automatically post-tournament, converting excess seating capacity into affordable public housing, community spaces, or commercial real estate. This approach maximizes asset utility and ensures that public investments continue to benefit society long after the event concludes. Joint regional hosting must become the mandatory default for all future mega events. By distributing matches across continental economic zones, the international sports ecosystem can thrive without exposing any single nation to public debt vulnerability or fiscal instability. This collaborative framework supports sustainable growth and ensures that the benefits of hosting are shared across multiple economies. The World Cup's macroeconomic impact is shaped by global sports governance. FIFA's centralized control over commercial channels and decentralized financial liabilities creates a lopsided arrangement. Host nations are forced to absorb risks while FIFA extracts high-margin rewards. Understanding this governance structure is key to reforming the economics of mega events and ensuring fairer outcomes for host countries. The World Cup creates persistent marketplace distortions before, during, and after the tournament. These include inflated projections, cost overruns, and suppressed local enterprise activity. The event structure systematically undermines nominal tourism gains and creates fiscal vulnerabilities for host nations. Addressing these distortions requires a comprehensive understanding of the institutional mechanics and a commitment to structural reform. Auction theory and game theory are central to understanding the bidding wars for World Cup hosting. The winner's curse illustrates how nations overestimate the value of hosting, leading to overpayment and destroyed net economic value. These concepts highlight the need for more rational, data-driven approaches to mega-event bidding and underscore the risks of speculative forecasting. In sports economics, a white elephant is a capital asset whose maintenance costs are disproportionate to its long-term utility or local demand. These assets are often stadiums built for mega-events, which become burdens on public finances after the tournament. Understanding the white elephant syndrome is crucial for designing more sustainable infrastructure policies and avoiding wasteful investments. The crowding out effect describes how the influx of sports fans during the World Cup alters local market dynamics. High demand for hospitality triggers price inflation, causing traditional tourists and business travelers to avoid the country. This displacement results in marginal or negative net tourism gains, challenging the economic justification for hosting. Recognizing this effect is vital for realistic forecasting and policy design. The displacement effect occurs when the arrival of sports fans replaces stable, high-margin tourism with transient, single-focus visitors. These fans spend primarily on match tickets and accommodations, contributing minimally to broader tourism sectors. The effect highlights the limitations of relying on mega-events for sustainable tourism growth and underscores the need for diversified economic strategies. Nation branding is a key motivation for hosting the World Cup. Countries use the event to showcase their economic rise, modernize infrastructure, and build global diplomatic capital. However, the risks and opportunity costs are significant. Successful nation branding requires careful planning, realistic projections, and a focus on long-term benefits rather than short-term spectacle. Soft power is the ability to influence global perceptions through culture, diplomacy, and international events. Qatar's World Cup strategy focused on building soft power by transforming infrastructure and positioning itself as a global hub. The long-term value of this approach depends on leveraging new assets to attract investment and talent, supporting sustainable growth beyond the tournament. The consortium joint hosting model offers significant advantages over single-nation hosting. By spreading matches across multiple countries, the model dilutes fiscal risk, maximizes operational efficiency, and leverages existing infrastructure. This approach supports sustainable mega-event hosting and ensures that benefits are shared across economies, reducing the likelihood of debt crises and post-event burdens. The multiplier effect describes how economic activity generated by the World Cup spreads across regions, boosting local economies. The consortium model enhances this effect by distributing matches and spending across multiple markets, avoiding localized hyperinflation and infrastructure overload. Understanding the multiplier effect is key to maximizing the positive impact of mega-events. Asset optimization is central to the consortium hosting model. By using existing stadiums and infrastructure, host nations minimize capital expenditure and maximize economic returns. This strategy prevents the creation of white elephant assets and ensures that public investments continue to deliver value long after the tournament ends. Fiscal sustainability is a guiding principle for future sports economic policy. Host nations must prioritize investments that deliver long-term benefits, avoid debt vulnerability, and support public welfare. Structural reforms, such as pre-existing infrastructure mandates and tax policy changes, are essential for building a sustainable global sports ecosystem. A strategic framework for sports economic policy includes mandating pre-existing infrastructure, abolishing tax exemptions, prioritizing adaptive design, and institutionalizing regional rotations. These reforms address the systemic risks of mega-event hosting and support sustainable growth. Policymakers must focus on protecting public capital and maximizing asset utility for long-term societal benefit. Let's visualize the white elephant syndrome with a schematic. Imagine a stadium built for the World Cup, with high construction costs and ongoing maintenance expenses. After the event, attendance drops and the asset becomes a financial drain. Funds that could support healthcare or education are diverted to maintain the empty arena. This schematic illustrates the opportunity cost and long-term fiscal impact of mega-event infrastructure. Now let's visualize the consortium hosting model. Multiple existing stadiums across 3 countries are used for the tournament. Each stadium is connected to icons for operational efficiency, shared fiscal burden, and regional economic boost. The schematic shows matches distributed across venues, minimizing capital expenditure and maximizing the multiplier effect. This model illustrates how joint hosting reduces risk and supports sustainable growth. Let's illustrate the crowding out effect. The schematic shows a city with hotels, restaurants, and airports. During the World Cup, sports fans arrive, causing prices to spike. Traditional tourists and business travelers are shown leaving or canceling trips. The schematic highlights concentrated spending in stadium vicinities and reduced activity elsewhere. This visual explains how mega events can displace regular tourism and weaken overall economic impact. This schematic visualizes fiscal policy reform for mega events. Show a host nation's treasury with arrows indicating tax collection from FIFA, sponsors, and commercial partners. Contrast with a previous model where tax-free bubbles block collection. Highlight the flow of recaptured wealth into public services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. The schematic demonstrates how abolishing tax exemptions supports fiscal sustainability. This schematic shows adaptive stadium design. Start with a large stadium for the World Cup, then illustrate modular sections being removed or converted post-event. Show excess seating transformed into public housing, community spaces, or commercial real estate. The schematic highlights the benefits of modular engineering and cross-utility, ensuring long-term asset value. Visualize regional rotations for mega events. Show a map with multiple countries hosting matches, each connected by arrows to icons for economic zone, shared benefits, and debt reduction. The schematic demonstrates how distributing matches across regions supports sustainable growth and avoids fiscal instability for any single nation. Macroeconomic value of the World Cup is far more complex than traditional narratives suggest. For most single host nations, the event functions as a regressive economic shock, forcing public sectors to absorb high-risk debt for single-use infrastructure while international organizations extract tax-exempt rewards. Sustainable mega-event hosting requires structural reforms, pre-existing infrastructure mandates, tax policy changes, adaptive design, and regional rotation. By prioritizing fiscal sustainability and asset utility, future hosts can protect public capital and ensure long-term societal benefit. The World Cup's legacy should be measured not by short-term spectacle, but by enduring economic and social value.